I know, we've got to skip about 6 slides, sorry guys. Part of what makes this comparison anxiety, which I think we all understand, we all grasp, we all get, is the fact that it's made more acute by the incredible amount of choices we're given or that are available to us in this hyper-consumer world. There are millions of choices that what you can do. Here's an example. You go into a supermarket, you want to buy laundry detergent, right? You want to wash your clothes. So you walk past, first of all, a million other products to even get to the laundry detergent section. Then you've got 100 options. Let's be conservative. You've got 30 options, maybe, okay? So how do you decide? Packaging. Which one looks the best? Always the first port of call, right? Which one's got the brightest colors? Which one's got the happy mother on the cover with the beaming babies or whatever it is? But then you don't want to be superficial because everyone knows that if you look at the outside, you're superficial. So you look at which one costs the least because you think, I should be cheap because that's saving money. But then what if it doesn't work well? So you look at the high price, but then what if your friends see you using a high price detergent and they think, oh wow, they're spending like 120 Hong Kong on this thing and I got mine for 40 or something like that. So you go mid-range because that's safe and no one's going to judge you there. And so, but there's like 6 of them. So how do you compare then? Well, you turn it around, you look at the ingredients. What's in the ingredients? And let's be honest, nobody knows what the heck those ingredients are in detergent anyway. So then you go, all right, well, hang on, what did mum use? That's a good one to go for. What did mum use? Because your clothes, you love the smell of your mum's laundry. And so what did mum use? But then you've got a friend who didn't use that brand and used another one, and that other brand was so much better. So you don't know what to do. So you were there for 7 minutes, let's say, or several minutes. You just grab one, you are stressed out, you don't know what to do. Now, I know it's not always like this with laundry detergent powder. Most of us just go in and be like, yeah, I've used that before, that's good. But it serves to illustrate the point that we have a million choices. How do you even make up your mind when it comes to these choices? And this leads us to the next thing, where in the rest of our lives we have something which is called choice anxiety. So you get anxiety from comparison with others, and you get anxiety from the plethora of choices that are available to you. All of these which actually make you dissatisfied. All of which the hyperreal world has created in order to do that. Now, I'm not saying that a lot of choices is a bad thing. I mean, I don't want to go back to kind of Western Germany, where you can only buy one loaf of bread, one type of milk, one type of whatever. I don't think we should go there. But the stats show, let's go to 32. The stats show this. A large array of options may diminish the attractiveness of what people actually choose. The reason being that thinking about the attractions of some of the unchosen options sometimes detracts from the pleasure that you derive from the one you chose. Okay? It's slightly economic, but I think it's okay. It's great to have all these choices, but it actually works against your happiness, is what I'm saying, okay? Choice anxiety invades every area of your lives. Look at the classic romantic comedy. Now, I apologize that I'm going to take this one to town, but it's true. Every single movie in the romantic comedy genre is about a nice young woman who has to choose who she'll love. Let's be honest, that's what they're all about. And there's 2 guys. There's the friendly, reliable, safe, and boring guy. Or there's the rude, brutish, infuriating, but he's devilishly handsome boy. And which one she's going to pick? She's in choice anxiety. And when she picks one for about a quarter of the movie, she's always, oh, what about the other guy? What about these great qualities? And then she gets, okay, so she flips over to him. And then she's, oh, but what about him? He just did something so amazing. This is choice anxiety. Now, I don't mean to trivialize rom-coms. I love them. They're really good to watch, some of them. But you're starting to see the point here. We face choice anxiety. So the next question is, this anxiety that you have over choice comes from things like, what identity should you hold? How are you going to look? How are you going to present yourself at work? Okay? I'm going to give you 2. How do you live your life? There's a billion ways that you can choose to live your life and everything. Who do you be friends with? Things like that, okay? So the question that I have for you is, for you guys personally, what are some areas in your life where you experience choice anxiety? That by letting go of other options or having too many choices, it's making you feel crap inside. Because if it was just one option, you'd be like, okay, this would be so much easier. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, go for it. Okay, I know everyone wants to talk, but can this be the last person talking now? Okay. Sounds like we're kind of wrapping it up. Who wants to share? What are some examples? Matthew, you look like you finished off quite nicely in your group. What do you have there? Yep. It's good. What else? I'm wondering if there's anyone who doesn't have a product. Take it away from a product, think about something else in your life. Does that make sense? So, not just a choice about a product, but like maybe a life choice about something. Directional choice, that's another way to put it. Okay, well, it looks like we're not anxious at all. Yeah. Kristen, you're allowed to speak in this church. Come on. What would you like to say? Grocery stores? Okay. Okay. That's good. That's very, very good. All right. Anyone else? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's true. Is there anyone else? If not, that's okay. The thing about this choice anxiety that you've all expressed in different ways, especially in your groups as well, is that it affects a lot of different things in our lives. Relationships is an obvious one because some of us are so worried that we shouldn't get married because we're afraid that we're going to make the wrong choice, right? So you say no, or you just don't even date anyone because what if I pick the wrong person and then it ends up that, she's unfaithful or he's abusive or, or there's like, in Hong Kong, there's like 1,000 guys that I could date, so why would I date one of them? Do you know what I mean? We're afraid of making a choice, right? Or we're afraid about limiting our options. I've heard that one before. I don't want to limit my options, especially from those bankers. Don't want to limit my options. There's hundreds of girls in this city. Why would I want to limit it to one, Right? Because hyperreality tells us that there is a sexual smorgasbord. I like that. I like that word, It's the alliteration. It's not the meaning behind it. Okay, here's another way we do it. We change jobs every 2 years. It's the current thing that everyone does. Do 2 years of a job, get some experience, then go to another one. Do another 2 years, do another 2 years. Which sounds good, but the problem is that for some people it is a career move. They do 2 years here because they're trying to get set skills. For the majority of people, it's because they're worried that they've made the wrong choice with their first job. It's like people who go and study law. In New Zealand, if you study law at university, only something like 9% of people who study law actually end up doing law. Everyone else just goes off and becomes a teacher or becomes a doctor or a surf bum or something like that. But we are so worried that we've made the wrong first choice. We're anxious, exactly like you said, over the city that we want to live in, the country that we might have lived in. There's also something called party anxiety, and I have done this, where you're at one party and you're texting your mates at the other party, like, so what's happening where you are? Like, it's kind of cool here, but this ugly person just turned up, so could I come over there? Are they all beautiful? Well, it's not quite like that, but you know what I mean. Is the party better there? Is it better on the other side of the fence? This happens all the time. I guarantee everyone's done at least one or two of these things, if not all of them. Sometimes it even comes down to religious faith. Okay, this is where it starts a bit deep, touching some nerves here, where some of us are worried because we look at non-believers and we see the way they're living and we go, do I actually want to give everything to God? Because if I do, I can't do this fun stuff. Because that's fun. And look what I'm missing out on. Right? We have this anxiety of choice because the hyperreal world is telling us, be who you want to be. Right? Do anything you want to do. You can create your entire future. And so we've bought into that. And because we've bought into it, we now have total anxiety over what choice we're going to make. Part of it also to do with the fact that a lot of value systems have been removed, but let's stick with anxiety of choice for now. The other thing that comes along with it is we don't just know what to do beforehand, but when we get into decisions, once we've made decisions, we actually regret our decisions. And we start looking at, we look back, like 10 years into marriage, you might look back and go, did I marry the right person? Or, you buy those shoes, and then all of a sudden you realize that the leather is too soft, and so when it rains in Hong Kong, they're going to get destroyed. And so you regret it and wish you'd got the harder leather shoes. Or, something like this, right? At the moment that we start comparing the choices once we've made them, this is when our lives become detached from reality and we start taking part in hyper-reality. Because what we're doing is that we're creating mind movies. We're creating fantasy worlds of what we could be doing, who we could be with, what we could be enjoying, instead of actually enjoying where we are now. And often these are things which, let's be honest, we don't have any chance of achieving. Because you can't leave your wife and go start a stable, solid relationship with someone else. Sometimes you can, but the majority of the time you can't. And you might be fantasizing about it, but it doesn't mean you can do it. And this is what hyperreality does to us. It makes us think that every option is still viable and every option is going to be promising, right? So, we've got some questions now before we get into where real life meets hyperreality. Where in your life are you currently facing choice anxiety? So not have you faced it, but I want you guys to go a little bit deeper. And this might be a bit tough, but is there an example in your life where you're currently anxious about a choice? Okay, go. Actually, can I interrupt? Can you go to the next slide as well? There's a second question on the next one, because some of you might not be experiencing this one. The second question is, do you ever relive a choice that you have already made and wonder that, what if? Okay? So either it's a beforehand, am I anxious about choices ahead of me, or have I made a choice and I am in the middle of that choice, there's no way out of it, and I'm creating a hyperreal fantasy world around what I could have done. Okay? I know that's really deep. I apologize, but let's see. Okay. Whoever is speaking now, can that be the last person? Okay. Yeah, it's fine. Take 30 seconds. This is going to be good. Go for it. Go for it. Yeah, just go. No. I'm not going to make you guys share this one afterwards because I know this can be really personal. Okay? Okay. 5 seconds. Put the anchor on. That's all right. This is a good question. Okay, bring it back in. Bring it back in, please. I'm really glad that these groups have got people of lots of different ages because I hope some of the young ones are getting some wisdom from the old ones and maybe understanding some realities about life as well. I'm not going to ask you to share about that one because that's tough. But I think the last question there is the one that I think if you are struggling is one worth asking. What would it be like for you for in this decision that you're at right now, what would it actually be like if you enjoyed what you had for its own sake? What would it be like if you actually appreciated the reality of what you had and didn't compare it? Or you looked at a decision and you realized that it didn't matter which one you chose, after you've made that decision, you can enjoy that decision that you've made and you don't have to think about the other ones. What would it be like? It would be freeing. It would be totally real. It would be totally authentic. And there would be no comparison and no choice anxiety, so to say. I mean, you still have to think about what decision you're going to make, but it wouldn't worry you as much, right? So, we've only got a little bit of time left, so I can't really go through everything, but I want to raise a few questions. This is where real life meets hyper-reality, okay? So, we all know we don't live in the hyper-real world, and I think most of the people that I've met here in church, for some reason, whatever, are actually maybe a little bit further along the path than people who are outside of church. What I mean by that is that the number of people who told me after last week's talk that I don't live in this world of hyper-reality. They said, like, a number of people said to me, I actually don't think I am quite as hyper-real as you might have talked about, Lawrence. And I was like, you know what, that's probably actually true. Maybe whatever. And it is true for most of us. Well, for some of us. But the problem is that there are some areas of our life where I can guarantee you are sucked in, and we haven't gone into those yet. And that's what I wanted to go into. So I don't want to rush through them, but let's talk about them a little bit. Okay? It's going to get a little bit depressing. I apologize, but whatever, we'll get through it. Real life is different to hyperreality. That's the first thing that we have to realize. Real life is not always glamorous, it's not always exciting, it's not always everything. And the thing is, we know this, but we still choose to live in a hyperreal world. It's kind of like we've got these two spheres, like a Venn diagram, and they're very kind of just touched in the middle. Because what we do is that we live in this real world, and then we do something in the hyperreal world, and it just kind of bisects our life. It intersects our life for a short period of time, and it's really exciting, it's really fun, it gives us the sense of transcendence. This is for us who are, kind of like trying to be in the real world, but then it dies and it goes away. Because the point of hyperreality is that it can't last forever. None of what you purchase, none of what you consume, none of what you try to experience, none of what you portray to others will last forever. It will only last for this. And sometimes we dip our toes in the pool, so to say. Kind of like you go on an overseas vacation and you create an itinerary which is based around the type of life that you ideally want to live. And for a week you're like, this is the life. Right? Such a great quote. Because it points out the fact that this is the life you want to live. This is the hyperreality. But you're not living there because you can't live there in the real world, right? Or you make a big purchase. You buy something that's really expensive and you get a total rush and a high, but then it does get old and it's not about the rush anymore, but it's about enjoying that purchase in your real life. Or you go on a diet, right? Let's say you're really overweight, kind of like I am. You go on a diet, it brings your body back to a level of healthy, and you're all excited about that, right? Like it's kind of doesn't make sense. So one of the things is when you look at people who are unhappy and they are frustrated with their lives, this is where you start understanding the title of the book that I stole this from. He calls it The Trouble with Paris. Because in New Zealand, there are a whole bunch of girls and Australia, who are they've just finished university or just finished high school, and they've been stuck, they've been confined, they've been locked up, whatever, and they need to go experience the world, experience their freedom, and they kind of feel like if I just went to Paris, or London, or, insert name of exotic foreign country with some historic reference there, if I just go here, then my entire life I can forget about it and I'll just redefine myself and recreate myself. This is really common for New Zealand and Australian girls. And then they all come back and the topic of conversation for the next 15 years is what an amazing time they had in Paris. Okay? So this is how hyperreality works. It creates this fictitious example for us where we actually stop living in the real world and we start living in a fantasy world. Because the reality is there are some characteristics about the real world that I'll rush through them a little bit, and I'll pick up on a few that I think are worth looking at. And this is it, okay? 55. This is not fun. This is the characteristic of reality. Reality is boring. It's mundane. Let's be honest, it is. There are times in your life when it is totally boring. You have to work. You have to get a job. It's true. You spend most of your lives in the office, and the other half in bed, asleep, resting, so you can get up and go to the office again. Okay? Now, you might be in a really cool office, but the fact is, even though you toil and work, it still gets boring after a while. And even though your job might have heaps of meaning, and I'm saving kids in Africa, it's still going to get boring because that's kind of how work is in the fallen world. It just is boring sometimes. So get on with it. There are consequences to your actions in the real world. That sucks. There's injustice in the real world. There have been books written on that. There is pain in the real world. You are, in the grand scheme of things, from the world's perspective, totally insignificant in the real world. Right? Now, not in God's eyes, but in the world, you kind of are. I'll go through this soon. And then you die. Okay? This is reality. But this is the thing about reality and about happiness. It's actually not about what you experience. It's about how you experience it. That's what reality is about. It's not about what you're experiencing. It's not about what products you're buying. It's about the state of mind and the way you experience them that actually brings it about. So let's, for example, these are all folded. I'm just going to hold them and drop them as I go. Mundane and boring. Hyperreal world will tell you that you should be entertained your entire life. Everything should be interesting. Everything should be exciting. Everything should be entertaining. I mean, you look at it. I mean, for example, the way that the TV sitcoms do it is that even boring jobs, they cannot help but make it romantic. Like, you're washing the dishes together, and all of a sudden he throws soap suds, and she throws soap suds, and then all of a sudden they're making love on the floor. And aren't boring chores amazing? No, they're not always amazing. Sometimes you have to do the boring stuff in life, right? Or you've got cops on TV who they're like, I found this speck of something infinitesimally small, I'll put it in my computer and boom, now I know who the guilty person is. Again, rubbish. Computers take forever to analyze data. The world is boring while you're waiting for it to start up, while you're waiting for it to stop being frozen, while you're waiting 3 weeks for the internet in the ICM office to actually start working, right? Sometimes life is boring and you can't get stuff done when you want to do it. When you encounter these mundane periods, you've got to figure out what you want to do. Does it mean your life sucks? That's the first question, because the world will tell you it does. So, a question is, are you ever bored? I hope everyone says yes, because I know that you are. There are times when we're bored. And the question that you need to ask yourself then is, what do you do to distract yourself? What do you do to actually to remove yourself from the mundaneness of your life in order that somehow you find meaning? Okay? It's an interesting question. Let's go to work. Haha, fun. The reality is, work is part of your life. You've got to exercise to keep your body healthy. You've got to weed gardens to keep them productive. And you've definitely got to practice personal hygiene so you don't become infected. You've got to work to support yourself. And you have to cook meals in order to eat, unless you live in Hong Kong, where everything is the same price. Okay? But this is the fact about the hyper-real world, is that it says you don't need to work. You don't need to toil. You can just go become a ski bum or a surf bum, both of which things I've been tempted by. One of them very recently. So this is